In Chapter 2, we study the fundamental framework of American politics and institutions, the Constitution. Your authors begin this chapter by discussing the case of Barbara Johns, who led a student walkout at her high school because she was upset that the condition of her school was starkly inferior to that of other all-white schools in her home district of Farmville, Virginia. Her seemingly insignificant protest had an enormous impact on civil rights because a group of outside lawyers saw fit to take up her case and combine it with a handful of others, taking them all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Her small act of civil disobedience, combined with the hundreds of others that were taking place around the country during the mid to late 1950s, resulted in one of the most important Supreme Court decisions in American history, the famous Brown v. Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas case, which found that separate but equal facilities that separated blacks and white citizens were unconstitutional. The court specifically ruled that segregated education facilities were inherently unequal and violated the 14th Amendment, which declares no state shall deny to any person the equal protection of the laws. But, as we will see in a separate chapter, the Brown case desegregated more than public schools. It established the legal precedents used to desegregate the Jim Crow South and made desegregation the law of the land. Just consider for a moment the power that Americans place in this document written more than 230 years ago. Essentially, the Constitution serves as part owner's manual, part rule book for the processes and institutions of American government. It details how the government operates, and it presents the black and white what the government may do and how to do it. If you want to become a scholar of American government and politics, you must begin with a full understanding of the Constitution. As we asked in the previous unit, the question of who are we is central to this course, and as we've seen before, the answer to that question is always changing. Yet the Constitution provides the ground rules for those changes and organizes our political life. While the Declaration of Independence describes the ideas that shape our nation, the Constitution takes those ideas and turns them into laws. It institutionalizes American ideas. Okay, so the Constitution guides the government, but there is the small problem that we're putting our present national interests in the hands of a document whose founders wrote it over 230 years ago. Because the founders had no idea about the present technologies and societal problems that we would face in the future, it is often unclear how the Constitution applies to modern questions. Remember, we're talking about a document that is just 4,400 words written on 4 pages of parchment a long time ago. Many provisions can be read different ways, and the document is silent on topics that Americans worry about, from budget deficits to immigration and global warming to pandemics. As a result, we always have to interpret how the Constitution applies to a case today. For this reason, we often describe the Constitution as a living document. Segregation is that prime example. The Constitution says nothing about racial segregation. Back in 1996, as states were imposing segregation on American politicians, the Supreme Court ruled 8-1 that segregation did not violate the Constitution. In 1954, the court unanimously said that it did. The case that students initiated was packaged with different cases, and different justices in different eras read the same words in changing ways. We constantly debate exactly how to read the Constitution words and how to apply them to the questions we face. So in the remainder of this unit, we will be looking at the documents, events, and historical contexts that helped shape the founders as they wrote and adopted this document. We will look at the 2 documents that most of us consider as influential in the development of our new constitutional democracy. Those would be the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation. Next, we will look at the structure of the Constitution from the perspective of how it organizes our institutions, particularly the 3 main branches of government: the legislative, which makes the laws; the executive, which implements and enforces the laws; and the judicial, whose prime responsibility is to apply and interpret the laws. I look forward to working with all of you this week as we take apart and digest this most sacred of American documents, the Constitution.